Welcome to Close Watch, now a proud member of the Odd Pods Media Network. This is the show where we get to know our guests through the movies they love. This is our first episode of 2025. I'm your host, Robert Yaniz Jr. This is episode 22. As always, you can find more episodes of this show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, and other podcatchers, as well as crookedtable.com. Ratings and reviews are always appreciated. Today, it's good to hear me, isn't it? I had to start off with some kind of reference to this film. We're still doing our movie musical thing that we've been doing since 2023. I didn't really have a lot of new episodes. Okay, I had one new episode of this show last year, and it kind of fell by the wayside. So I'm invigorating our focus on movie musicals, and of course, it only makes sense to come back with the big movie musical everyone is talking about. That is, of course, Wicked from 2024, and I am honored to welcome to the show Lauren Knight of That Movie Is Fine. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you, Robert? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. How's everything? I guess in this new year treating you so far?
Uh 2025 is mostly treating me personally okay. So I have hopes that it'll get better, but no, things have been going really well for me, especially like career-wise and
That's awesome.
personal life-wise. So I think I have high hopes.
How is everything going with the podcast? Tell people about your show.
Oh my gosh. So we've been on a bit of a hiatus. We don't get to record nearly as often as you do and some other friends of mine. I'm always so jealous. But I do have a podcast. It is called That Movie Is Fine, and it's available everywhere that you can get podcasts. You know, it's on Spotify, it's on iTunes, it's on Google. But that was started like pre-pandemic, and then of course like stops and starts. But we're hoping to record again soon. But yeah, so that's my little podcast that I co-host with my friend Aaron Hudson.
No, that's cool. Have you covered a lot of musicals over there?
You know what? We actually haven't. I'm like a musical fiend. I was gonna say queen, but there are always people that could like top me. But
Right.
like I love musicals, but not so much for for my podcast partner. In fact, I told him I was going to be on your show, and he was like, "We probably could have done a whole episode just on Wicked and like we have differing opinions on it."
Uh-huh.
When we rated it on Letterbox and things like that, we had, different stars and stuff. So, we actually haven't covered too many musicals, but we should do like a Joker 2, Wicked, Amelia Perez. We should just throw them all in there
There
and
you
just see
go.
what happens.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That would be really fun. I think it's interesting, and this has kind of like been a big entry point for guests coming into the show as we've been talking about movie musicals. That it's one, I feel like the genre is sort of divisive among modern audiences, which always kind of confuses me because it has such a long like history in the medium. Like or some of the biggest blockbusters of the 40s, 50s, 60s, etc are musicals. It was such a prominent genre for so long,
Mhm.
and then lately, I feel like the last few years, it's sort of it's cyclical, right? It comes and goes, and so I feel like the last few years it was sort of phasing off, and then more recently, Wonka was a big hit, Mean Girls was a big hit, obviously Wicked. As of this recording, still has 10 Oscar nominations. Emilia Perez, which you mentioned, has 13, leading the nominations this year as at the Academy Awards. What do you think it is about musicals that makes it that people are either into it or they're not, that they can't buy in?
I had a film professor once who didn't like musicals, and I was like, "How can you be like a champion of film, right? And not like musicals?" A lot of people just don't like the spontaneity of it. Like it's not grounded in reality, right? Like things like this never happen. You're not at the supermarket and everyone starts singing along to whatever is like on the radio,
Unfortunately.
and then everyone has like a choreographed dance that everyone knows. Like but that's why I really love flash mobs too. Like I love flash mob videos and would love to be part of a flash mob one day. But like I think there's also some like old timiness, for lack of a
Yeah.
better phrase. Like even if a musical is modern, like there's this old timey sensibility of like, oh, that's for like old people and you know that's it's you're categorizing people based on like their age or their gender or their like sexual orientation. You're like, oh, that's not for me. That's for
Right.
those people. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
so I think people love music, but musicals are used in the past have been very like classic, right? We've got some newer ones, like not just Amelia Perez, but we've got like other, like older musicals and things that try and do something different. But I think for the most part, there's this mentality that, oh, they're not for me. They're for my parents. They're for my grandparents. People
Or
don't
they're
break into song,
right, or they're for,
randomly.
like, a very niche audience, and it's like,
Yeah.
that's for the theater kids, that's for, like, certain demographics, that's not mainstream, enough or whatever, which is interesting since the film we're talking about has made over, like, 700 million worldwide. It's one of the biggest one of the highest grossing movies of 2024. How do you think, that being said, all the context that we just laid, why do you think Wicked was able to sort of break through that?
I think Wicked has had a following for like, what is it, like 20 years now or something absolutely insane. Like, I honestly can't believe there hasn't been a movie adaptation sooner. I know there were some like stops and starts. I think Wicked has catchy tunes, right? You sing them, you hum them like long after you've heard them. I think the star power, especially when you're talking about like Ariana Grande, you have her following. You have all of the theater kids that have been wanting a Wicked movie, right? All the theater kids that maybe never got to see it on tour or on Broadway, or even if they did, this is their chance to like relive that and watch it as many times as they want,
Mhm.
basically just paying one price instead of paying 60, 80, $100 for one ticket at on a Broadway stage to like go every time.
Right.
So I think there's name recognition. I think the fact that it was also done really well, in my opinion.
Mhm.
I don't think we'd be talking about Wicked if it was a flop, like if it didn't have good casting, if it didn't have good production design. um, I think John Chu is a great musical director. So I think it has a lot of things going for it, that maybe some other musicals, like you look at Phantom of the Opera. I don't know how well that movie did when it came out, but definitely not nearly as good, right?
No.
But that musical also has such a passionate following. So I think people underestimate theater kids. I think people underestimate just how many of us there are.
I think to our point earlier, like, I think also this is a lot of people going to see it multiple times. Like, this
Yes.
is definitely like, I've seen it. I've never so we'll get into our histories with Wicked and Wizard of Oz and stuff in a minute, but like, I haven't seen Wicked. I was a big Wizard of Oz person, but I went to see this 4 times in theaters,
Wow.
which I almost never do.
Yeah.
Again, like, life is busy. It's hard to get to the theater more than once to see the same thing, let alone 4 times. But
Right.
that I think part of it is, one, it's riffing on it, and I think some people still have this confusion. It's not a direct prequel to The Wizard of Oz. It's riffing on that universe and kind of doing its own version of that story. Which kind of coasting or leveraging the iconography of that movie that we all know so well. So I think, one, it's kind of it's playing with a property that a lot of people have connection to, generations of love for the Wizard of Oz. And I think because of that, it's also accessible to all ages. Like, my daughter and I went to one of the sing along screenings. She's 8, so it's like you could bring all ages of people to see it. It's like 85 years of history or whatever. And also, it's a world, I think, that, to what we were saying earlier about, like, people can't suspend their disbelief in order to buy into a musical world. The world of Oz is already sort of musical in a lot of our, by nature, and because of that movie,
Mhm.
because of the Wiz, because of, all the different versions of the L. Frank Baum books that incorporate music in such an integral way. I think people are just kind of like, oh, Oz, of course, musical. That's how that is, as opposed to, Mean Girls, where some people are like, oh yeah, like the stage musical, and other people are like, why are they singing in Mean Girls? What is this? Oz is just like we all kind of accept that yes, they sing there. That's part of it.
Mhm.
So I
I
think that's yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was gonna say you
No, go
brought up
ahead.
a really good point about the sing-alongs as well, because I think there are a lot of musicals that get released that don't get, even if they do decently well at the box office, like, they don't get embraced by theater owners even, right?
Yeah,
Like, a theater has to be willing to commit, and, like, a studio also is they went all in with, like, sing-along screenings. I know they've released a couple, like, there are a couple movies that have been re-released with, like, the lyrics on the
right.
screen, I don't think they did that specifically for the sing-along events. I think you just had to, like, know the words, but the fact that there were special screenings dedicated to theater kids where you could actually go and sing and not, like, interrupt other people by singing in a dark
Exactly.
theater. You could dress up. Like, I know so many people just, like, wore pink, they wore green, they were both. They had wicked, like, Letterman jackets. Like, there was wicked merch at Target. Like, there's it really became, like, this kind of cultural phenomenon, I feel
Yeah.
like almost like a Barbenheimer level of, like, excitement and, like, devotion.
Yeah, no, it really has. To your point of people dressing up, like I think, as we all know, pink goes good with green. That makes a lot of sense. It's also, I think it what you mentioned about the cast. I think a lot of it is, and I'm not taking anything away from Ariana Grande. I think she's amazing in this movie, but I
Mhm.
think a lot of it, and she earned her role. We all have heard, this is like a legendary press tour. These two
Yes.
like weeping their way through everything. And I'm not making fun of that. I get they are theater kids and they are passionate and they spent years of their life doing this. So of course, I would be surprised if they weren't emotionally invested in this project and these characters in this story. But also, you have to assume that a large portion of the love that this movie has received, or at least the attention that this movie has received, is that you have one of the world's biggest pop stars in one of the leading roles. And like you said, like the audience, the social media following, and the fandom that she brings to it, outside of everything else we're talking about with Wizard of Oz and theater kids and fans of the musical and everything.
I work in marketing for a living, specifically like movie and movie theater marketing. And the Wicked marketing campaign seemed very genuine. You know how, like, you see some pressers and stuff like that and you're just like, "Oh, nobody wants to be there," or like they're being forced to do this and you can tell they don't like each other, or there's
Right.
drama behind the scenes. The Wicked marketing campaign I liken to Deadpool and Wolverine,
Yeah.
because, like, they did things together, like, Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds seem to actually be really close friends, and they play off of each other, and so it was kind of like the male answer to, like, Wicked, right? Like,
Yeah.
Wicked had the 2
Yeah.
ladies at the forefront and then Deadpool, Wolverine, but everything they did seemed just kind of natural, and they went viral, but it didn't seem forced, and that's how I feel a
Exactly.
lot of the Wicked marketing campaign went as
Yeah.
well, and I think that matters.
I think that absolutely matters. I think you can sense that to a degree. What was sort of when these two ladies? Well, let's back it up a bit. So, what is your history with Wicked? You mentioned you referred to yourself as a theater kid. You put on Letterbox, and I keep shouting out people's Letterbox reviews because that is a place I look for when I'm like, who would be a good guest for this episode? You said you were really skeptical going into the movie, and you just referred to yourself as a theater kid. You had the Wicked cast recording on loop and all of that stuff. So tell me a little bit about like what is your history with musical theater, and then Wicked specifically.
Sure. I discovered musical theater in middle school. I started out as a dancer when I was 4 years old. I did ballet and jazz, and then later transitioned to tap as well. But I have my feet are, like, severely, like, I've got flat feet. I've got, like, tendon issue. Like, anyway, dancing was not good for my feet. So I needed to find another outlet. And so I found musical theater. I went to summer camps. I actually became like a camp counselor later at the same summer camp as like a way to give back. This was like in high school. So I discovered like chorus in middle school. So I joined choir, like chorus, and then
Right.
this company toured middle schools performing like a little hour-long musical stage show that had like a message and stuff behind it, like a wholesome school show. They came and performed and they had brochures. And so they're the ones that I first joined. I'll give them a shout out. They're called Atlanta Workshop Players. And they performed at my middle school, and I ended up joining like their classes and summer camps and things like that. High school, finally, there was drama club. So my freshman year, I joined drama club and I ended up becoming a thespian. So I got to go to thespian
Oh, wow,
conference.
cool.
So like all these theater nerds. We never put on any musicals while I was there, but I was in plays. I was tech as well. I did behind the scenes. After high school, I took some acting classes in college to fulfill like, some elective requirements. I did musical theater in college. Like shortly after I graduated, I was in a Stephen Sondheim show. I mean, not like with Stephen Sondheim, obviously, but like
Well, right.
I
Good
was in a
show. Good
Stephen
show, isn't it?
Sondheim musical. So I have a large. I still would dance. Like I grew up and my feet kind of changed a little bit, and so I was able to dance again and things like that. And then I moved out to Arizona and did community theater here for a few years to try and like make friends and like, be part of the community out here. So I was in some musicals as well. I saw Wicked the very first time it toured.
Uh-huh.
So it came to the Fox Theater in Atlanta where I like was raised. And so my mom and I, like, we had season tickets, to the Fox, and like we went and saw Wicked. It was amazing because, fun fact, I don't actually love The Wizard of Oz. I
I
like do not like The Wizard of Oz. I don't think I find it boring. Like, it's not my I know everyone out there is like, "How can you say that as a
I
theater kid?"
I actually know a few people who have been on this show who share your opinion,
Oh my
who are
god.
not.
Okay, so I'm
So
not alone.
there is a growing contingent of people who are like, it's overrated.
I mean, I respect it, right? Like, I respect it. I respect what it did for like Technicolor and like all of that. But I don't like the movie. Like, nothing engages me with it. Like, it's not something I'm a fan of. But Wicked, for some reason, really grabbed me. To the point where like I did have the cast recording. I had, memorabilia from the tour. um i I can't explain it. It just really like connected with me,
Mhm.
and I've always loved it, and that's why I was extremely skeptical because of all the stops and starts of trying to make the
Yeah.
movie. And then like I am not in the Ariana Grande demo. Like, she's not really my thing.
Yeah.
So like I was super nervous, when you cast someone who's popular, someone who's like of the moment. But she really I will probably talk about the cast, but she really won me over.
Yeah.
But I just was nervous, right? I knew Cynthia Erivo could sing because I saw the movie Harriet and she does the end credits
Yeah.
song for Harriet. So I knew she could sing, but it's still like such a demanding part, right?
Mhm.
So that I was so nervous, and then just bringing in everyone else like Jeff Goldblum, and just like it just seemed like a lot.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I
No.
mean? And the teaser trailer, like when they first released the like very first teaser, I was like, this does not look real. Like, I know it's not real, but like there needs to be some sort of grounding, in my
Right.
opinion. And like I just was like, oh my gosh, is this gonna be like cartoony? Is like what is gonna happen with this movie? So I was very, very, very skeptical.
No, that's fair. I mean, that's totally fair. I wonder if part of why you connected to this material more than The Wizard of Oz is that I feel like it has more of a there's more meat on the bones, like as far as the story is concerned. There's more of a perspective. There's more it's more it's more gray. It's more shades of gray than like, well, this is the bad, this is the villain, and this is like The Wizard of Oz, as much as I do love it, it is basically like she's lost and she needs to find her way back, and she meets random people along the way, and then that's kind of it. And
Yeah.
yet, and here there's a lot more push and pull. And I was going to ask at one point during this conversation, but I might as well ask it now. Like the question that the story opens with: are people born wicked, or do they have wickedness thrust upon them? Which already you're kind of like, this is not what I'm used to from Wizard of Oz.
Yeah,
You're not, you're stimulating me intellectually. Yeah, go ahead.
the show and the movie have layers, especially when you get to the animals, right? When you get to the talking animals, and then are people born wicked, or do they have wickedness thrust upon them? So the show and the movie have layers to them. I actually did read the book years ago, so I don't remember much. The book is a lot like denser, there's a lot, it's a lot headier. Um but what was I going to say? Oh, I it also spoke to me as a theater kid because I never belonged anywhere, like, until I found my people, in
Mhm.
high school. I'm the only child, so I never had siblings. I never like, I had to make connections, like, on my own. I was called weird growing up. I still get called weird. Like, I
Who among us doesn't?
identified with Elphaba as being like, I was made fun of for being smart in school and being a teacher's pet, right?
Mhm.
So, like, I identified to a degree of, like, wanting to change yourself so everyone will like you, and then realizing your own strength and power comes from, like, within and not other people. And, like, so I think, looking back, I think that that's a lot of what spoke to, 16, 18, 21-year-old me, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And this story, like I said, is sort of trafficking in Wizard of Oz iconography, like and this movie especially, I think, splits the difference and leans into the original 39 film more so with the costuming, with the production design, with all that. And we start with the ending of the Wizard of Oz, and then we're presented with a situation where Elphaba is our hero and Glinda the good is kind of the antagonist. And
Mhm.
to sort of see that shift and kind of work its way around, I think is really fascinating. I'm curious though, what was your reaction when you heard that they were splitting it into two movies? Because I know that was a big contentious thing for some fans at first.
Um, I was one of those people that was like, the Broadway musical is about 3 hours, and they're able to tell so much of a story. Like, I don't think we need a 6-hour version. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I was definitely, again, like, I was on the skeptic train. I was like, I'll give it a chance, I'll give it a chance, but, like, I don't know about Ariana, I don't know about Cynthia, I don't know about, like, I don't know about doing 2 separate movies a year apart. It didn't work well
Yeah.
for Mission Impossible, like, um so I definitely didn't think it needed to be 2 movies. Until I see part 2, I still don't know if it needed to be 2 movies, but it probably also shouldn't have been 4 hours. That's, like,
Right.
too
Right.
long, and it would have needed an intermission anyway. So until I see part 2, I'm not entirely sure, like, they did such a great job world building, so that is, they did get to take their time, and hopefully they'll lean more into the animals subplot, talking animals,
Yeah. Yeah.
more in the second, and, like, develop Elphaba more, so it does give them room to breathe. I'm excited for part 2, like, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, but until I see it, like, should they have done a 3.5-hour movie instead? I mean, probably not, but
Right.
how much are they going to add? Like, is it gonna be filler, or is it gonna be legitimate,
Yeah.
to
Exactly.
move the plot along, kind of thing?
Well, as of now, I haven't seen it on stage still.
Okay.
Between now and when the new one comes out, we have tickets to see it
Oh,
on
that's great.
Broadway. I have family in New York, so my aunt is gonna watch our kids for an evening, and we're gonna go to the Gershwin Theater
That's
to see Wicked
amazing.
there. So watch this space for further updates, I guess.
Yes.
Uh, um, but
Yes.
my understanding is that the plot in the show moves really fast, and it's like boom, 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 boom. So like it's
It
hard for
does.
me to imagine this all compressed into like an hour and a half.
Yeah, I can see that. Like if the movie is your only foray first, right?
Yeah,
Like if you see the movie first. So that's a perspective that I don't have, which is really interesting because I've got the musical perspective first, followed by the movie, and you have only part 1. Like you don't even know how it ends.
right, right, exactly.
I mean, you have an idea probably, but like you
I
don't really know how it ends, and like you don't know the songs either that are in like the
right.
second half of the show and stuff. So I think that's a really interesting perspective, and I'll definitely need to like keep that in mind, like when I talk to people and stuff, because not everyone has the same experiences. But I'm so excited for you.
Oh yeah,
I
thank
hope
you.
you like it. I hope you're not like, "Oh, that was too cramped," or whatever, like
No, I mean, I know enough of the Broadway production that I know what to expect. Like I don't know everything about the second half, but like I have a general idea of where it goes.
okay.
I don't know the details. I'm curious to see some of these characters, let's avoid spoilers, evolve in the second half. I'm curious to see how that plays out. But I do think that the most important thing, whenever they've taken a book and broken it into two movies, I'm thinking your Harry Potters, your Twilights, your Hunger Games. Like it always feels like one of these is jam packed with stuff, and the rest is just a slog.
Right.
This definitely isn't a slog, and I don't imagine the second half being that. It does feel like it's given the time jump and everything. Like, even if there wasn't another movie, this feels like a complete movie. This feels like a story. Like, how did the Wicked Witch get to be? It ends with her kind of on her way to becoming the Wicked Witch of the West that we know her as. So, like, I feel like it works in this case at least because the arc conclude comes to a conclusion if it's not the ultimate conclusion, if that makes sense.
No, it does. I think my concern for part 2 is the songs are not as good in my opinion or as
Mhm.
catchy. Like I feel like we've heard the best songs already in my opinion. And so like what is the second half going to do? Will they add new songs? I mean, it's not that the songs are bad, but they are not nearly because you get a lot more serious in the second act,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So it's no longer like light and bubbly, and Glinda has now, changed herself as a person as well, and seeing, how Oz operates and things like that. So it gets darker. So it'll be interesting though too to see what people think of that if in fact they do, follow the slightly darker tone, if you will.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I imagine they'll soften it a bit. I don't know if they're gonna soften it enough to get a PG on part 2 like they did with this one. That feels like a bit of a challenge, but seeing as you are coming from, the perspective of loving the stage musical, how did you feel about the stuff that they did add? The way that they did sort of elongate some of the songs or the little characters and moments that were added here?
I think for the most part, I liked it. I was sitting here trying to think about that because, like, Dancing Through Life, for example, is a really long song on stage. It's probably, I mean, like 6.5 minutes. This is 2 songs on the soundtrack. Like, it's the song and then it breaks up, and then you've got the Nessa Rose and Bach, like talking part, and then you've got the dancing between, with Glinda and Elphaba. So, um and like the when they go to Oz, like that's all elongated as well. Um
But
I
Dancing Through Life and One Short Day are each, like, probably 15-minute sequences or something like that.
They
It's
are, and
there are
there's still
yeah,
everything surrounding it, right?
yeah,
Like everything that leads up to all of those songs and after. So there's still like a chunk. I never found myself bored. I did think Wicked Part 1, goes along at a pretty good clip. I did have to get up and use the bathroom once, but I had seen the musical, and so I went during one of the 5-minute songs that Elphaba sings.
mhm,
Not that girl. I'm not that girl because I knew that I could like not miss anything, and I knew the
right.
words, so I could just like run to the bathroom and come back. But otherwise, I didn't think it was too long. I actually was surprised. Like that was part of my skepticism was like, how are they going to drag this out? right? Like, or are they going to drag it out instead of making it relevant? And I don't think there's anything I would have like removed. I think you're really able to get a sense of the characters, of the world. Um yeah, I think part 1 did a really good job.
And you were talking about the casting, obviously, Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande, earlier. What about the rest of them? What about Michelle Yeoh, who's self-admittedly not really a singer? I think kind of gets by here. I think Morrible has more singing in part 2, so that'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
My theater kid snobbery comes through, and I have a really hard time with musicals where the people don't actually sing well.
Right. I mean,
Um
it's a fair criticism.
I mean it, but I would never my god, Michelle Yeoh is mother, like mother goddess, so I would never like ever to her face. But I think that acting sells it. So I'd like to, cuz she to be fair like isn't in it that much in
Yeah,
part
yeah.
1, that much. And neither is, Jeff Goldblum. Jeff Goldblum has a jazz band, but like he kind of just sings his way. Like he's not a singer either. But
Yeah,
like he does the wizard so well that like
100%.
you accept that. Miss Morrible, that's tough because like she isn't a singer, but she's such a great actress. But like I believe she does have more songs in Act 2, so it's kind of like, oh, that's a little weird,
It's
you
it's not
know?
a it's not a character that's ever really has to carry a number though. Like
No,
she
that's very
So
true.
I think that's part of why, John Chu, who obviously worked with her on Crazy Rich Asians,
Yeah.
I think that was part of why he's like, "Oh, we gotta bring Michelle in for this." And I think she nails that switch that we see in Morrible where she's, like, all warm and accepting of Elphaba, and then, of course, once the truth is revealed, she's like nails that like loud clap, like taking over the getting the attention of the monkeys. Like that scene is just heartbreaking to watch. To watch, that's the thing that. Were there any moments in this movie that struck you like really emotionally? Because for me, there are certain things that every time I watch, because I'm a crier when it comes to movies. So, and there were multiple times in this one, especially on I think the viewing that I went by myself because I wasn't tending to one of my kids or whatever.
Yeah.
I was able to really kind of let it wash over me. Are there any moments like that really hit you? Because when she says this wicked witch and we see the close up of Elphaba, it's
That
just gutting.
yes. That got me. I have to say it didn't I wasn't like I was emotionally blown away by the talent and like by the singing of the 2 lead actresses.
That's fair.
That's what hit me emotionally. I think because I had seen the musical, so like I know how it plays out and I knew what was going to come next
Right,
even if it was going to be, like added in or elongated or whatever. Like I knew the beats. So I wasn't necessarily like struck by anything since I knew the journey and
right,
like
right.
the destination. But I will say like I took my mother and like she would constant we were in a row like all to ourselves, like luckily no one was around, but she was like, "Oh my gosh, the voices." It just kept like the voices is like what she kept like whispering to me, during this movie. And I think that's where the emotional impact
Yeah,
was. Um especially with Cynthia Erivo.
100%.
Like but I'm a crier too, but I can't say that there's anything that really like made
Have
me cry except maybe just that this movie finally like exists.
Yeah, yeah, and it's good.
And it's good. Yeah, exactly. Um
You If it exists and it was bad, you would have been crying for a different
for a
reason.
different reason. But yeah, I think it's just I cry sometimes whenever I see like Broadway shows
Yeah,
and everything too, like to see everyone up there and just like I just cry. So it was kind of like an overwhelming like emotional thing like that. It wasn't like a specific moment or anything.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
no. I Have you seen it the one time and so far?
I've only seen it the one time. Yes.
I would wonder if that might hit you more in subsequent watches because the first time you're more like, "All right, Wicked, I'm ready for you."
You know,
How are you going to pull this off?
I wanted to watch it again, but like I really want to own it on 4K because I still
Yeah,
believe in physical media. And
same.
so I don't want to rent it for $20 and I don't want
Absolutely.
to buy it digitally for 25. So I'm just waiting. So unfortunately, like I wasn't able to watch it a second time or a third time or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, no. So I did only see it the one time. Um but yes, I would like to see it again and just kind of let it wash over me now that I've seen it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't hit me as emotionally the first time either, for I think that same reason. Like, okay, what is this about? And we had the toddler with us who loves Wicked. Our 3-year-old son like is obsessed with Wicked. He'll ask for Wicked a lot.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
that's part of the reason the soundtrack's been on a loop for 2 months. Is that
I was
when I'm
wondering, I
not
was like,
playing it,
wow,
when
Robert
I'm
really likes this movie.
when I'm not playing it, my kids will request it a lot of the time.
Okay.
Um, so there's a little bit of both. Um, and that's just getting back to the cast. So Jeff Goldblum, I agree with you. Like I think vocally, obviously, he's not up to the level of like Cynthia Erivo, but he doesn't have to be. I think he has that sort of twinkle in his eye that you can't tell if he's just a cool person you want to hang out with or up to something. And
Right.
I think Jeff Goldblum, that's a unique characteristic that applies to Jeff Goldblum and probably few others in Hollywood, that he has such a distinctive energy about him, that he's like such a popular impression that people do because he's got a very an energy that, you know what I mean, a vibe
Yeah.
that I think where you can believe this guy can con his way out of anything basically.
Yes. And I think that that's definitely what sold, like that's the acting behind it. Like that's what sold it. And even same for Michelle Yeoh. Like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
acting is what is, what sells it cuz she is so good when she gets to finally have her like villainous moment kind of
If you
thing.
want your
Yeah.
families to be safe, you'll be loyal to our wizard. See, 4 times.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Jonathan Bailey also. I have not watched Bridgerton. So this was my first exposure
Mine
to
too.
Jonathan Bailey. So I was like, this guy's awesome.
Oh my gosh.
Incredible in this. So charismatic and like
Oh my gosh. I whispered to my mom, I was like, "Oh my god, this guy." She was like, "I know." Love I believe it was Norbert Leo Butz who played Fiyero in like the cast recording. And so to be fair, I never saw the original cast. Like I never had the pleasure of, seeing like Adina and Kristen. So I only have the cast recording. I think Jonathan Bailey delivered the role better. And I love, again, nothing against Norbert Leo Butz. Like he's like I believe a Tony winner. Like I'm not, but I think he did more with the character. I liked his voice, the way he like his physicality. Like he's definitely a dancer,
yeah.
and so that shone through as well as, being able to sing. I mean, the choreography for Dancing Through Life like was incredible with the stairs and the circles like in the library, the ladders.
Mhm.
It was it was insane. And he is charismatic, exactly like you said. Like he just like emanates, charisma like off the screen.
I also love too that the musical in particular has a very strong fan base among LGBTQ community.
Mhm.
And that the character, I believe, is canonically bisexual or whatever, and it feels like in this movie they honor that too. In that sequence was one of the ones that really stood out to me. I'm like, he's kind of flirting with everybody here. Like,
His
it
character
feels
would though, I feel like.
yeah,
Like
that's
it
what I'm
definitely
saying.
like cuz he's
But it
kind
felt
of
like
above everybody else with his like attitude,
but
you know.
like it feels like a roll of the dice these days whether a movie is going to tone that stuff down.
Yeah.
And I know that, Gregory Maguire, who wrote the book, has been outspoken about like hit the queer elements of his book were kind of cleaned up for the musical, but I feel like what was in the musical is kind of intact here. I think that's the main thing that has made so many Wicked fans and theater kids like yourself happy with this movie, is that it feels like what they needed to stay faithful, they kept faithful. where
Yes.
they could embellish and grow and expand, they did that in a respectful way, that like giving Elphaba a nanny who was a Dulcibert in this. That's a new
Yes.
character that's not in the musical, but makes
Correct.
sense because, well, you'd be like, well, no, that would only inform further why she's feels so strongly about the animals. She's
Yes.
got a connection with. So all of that, like, thematically just builds and builds. We'll do the cast, the rest of the cast here, and then we'll do our song rankings. Uh,
I
Ethan
mean,
Slater as Bach,
I was
and
gonna
then
say,
Marissa
and
Bode as
I
Nessa
was
Rose.
gonna say, in my opinion, if your movie is being called woke, then you're doing something right. I feel like.
Right. Also,
So
people who are accusing Wicked of being like, oh, why are you making Wicked political? It's like, it's kind of like Glinda in this movie being like, I don't know why why can't you just teach us history instead of harping on the past? I'm like, that is what it is, though.
right. No,
It is inherently
and you can
political.
tell like who hasn't read the book
Right.
because all of that stuff is even more, is even in more detail in the book.
Yeah.
It's a satire. He's using this like fictional land to talk about bureaucracy and like immigration and like otherism and like
Yeah.
acceptance and tolerant and intolerance and like everything like he's it's satirical.
Media spin.
Yeah, so I
Too,
feel like if
all of
you're
it.
doing some like if your movie's woke, then because my
Yeah.
mom was concerned. She was like, "Well, I don't know. I've heard things," and I'm like, "We're going to see it anyway. We're gonna go," and she
My
loved it.
I took my second viewing was with my mom, and she loved it also.
Yeah,
So yeah, mom approved.
yeah,
Uh, uh, as far as the rest of the cast, obviously Peter Dinklage is Dr. Dilliman,
yeah.
Ethan Slater as Bach, Marissa Bode as Nessa Rose. Anything about any of them? I mean, I know we're going to get a lot more Bach and Nessa Rose in the sequel, or the second half, really, at this point. And I think it's worth noting Marissa Bode, the first like actually disabled actress to play that
Yes,
role, which is a huge thing.
yes,
So
I was gonna point
props to
that
them for
out.
that.
Yeah, I was gonna point that out if you didn't. I think Bach is the only one that doesn't really seem like he's needed right now. Like, I hate to
Yeah.
say that. I'm sorry, Ariana. Like, I know that you and Ethan like are in love, but I he he doesn't do anything to really further the plot. I mean, yes, there's the dance, that he asks Nessa Rose to, but and only because of Glinda. But he you could have removed him, I think, and you wouldn't have really missed anything.
Right.
But then you couldn't just introduce him or throw him into part 2. So I get it, you know. But like I kept waiting for him to like do more and I was like, I don't even remember this character much from the show, which is terrible to say.
Well, it's also, I feel like it's also part of why in that moment in Dancing Through Life with Nessa Rose is like, we deserve each other, me and Bach. People are just like, really?
Yeah.
This guy, this guy,
Remember
him?
this guy? Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, and again, no shade to Ethan Slater as a person. I have no idea what he's like in real life. The character in this movie is just such a nothing burger of a character
I
as
know.
depicted in this movie.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit. Like, yeah, I he's the only one where I don't think he fully got to like shine,
Yeah.
so hopefully in part 2, like obviously like with that
God, I
plot
hope so.
line that should yeah.
Yeah. He's just like, oh, I'm gonna be there waiting
I'm
all
here
night. I'm
too.
like, Jesus, dude, move on. Um, let's see. Anything else in the cast? I think we covered the cast pretty well.
I think
Uh, I
yeah.
I think Bowen Yang and Bronwyn James also did a lot of improv as Fanny and Shen Shen, Galinda's two friends. I think they have a lot of fun little blink and you miss them one-liners that made it into the film. That was cool as well. But obviously, Wicked is, I think the fourth longest running musical on Broadway, one of the highest grossing as well. It's like up there with The Lion King, Phantom of the Opera, Hamilton, and the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
And lots of great songs, only half of which we get here. But let's break down our favorites from this one.
Let's talk about six, baby. Let's talk about flicks and me. Let's talk about what the good films and the bad films are to me. Let's talk about six. Let's talk about six.
So I had made a version of that a million years ago, and then I retooled it, and now I've been using it more prominently, and it's been fun to see everybody's reaction to.
Hilarious and
Thank you.
amazing, and I love it, and I wonder how many people actually get the reference.
No, not
Like
90s kids.
right, 90s,
They'll
that's
get
what I'm
it.
saying, like, 90s kids do, but I don't think anyone, you know, born in 2000
Right,
or later.
right. Original composition. Then let's say that.
I love it, I
Oh,
love it. Oh, that was
thank you.
amazing.
Appreciate it. What is your number 6 ranked song for Wicked Part 1?
My number 6 ranked song is "Dancing Through Life."
Nice. What is it about that? Give me a little
Um,
what went into your decision with Dancing Through Life?
so put it a little I almost put it a little further down just because of the choreography, but then I was also being like, well, as a song in general, like I find myself like I sing it a lot or like it'll be in my head. So like I do think it's catchy. It's also like Jonathan Bailey's only like star moment during that song, right? Because like he's not really in act 1 very much,
No.
you know? And so I think it's catchy. The choreography definitely played a part because there's definitely a lot more you can do here than you can do on stage, right? So like I think the choreography played a part, but just because it's Jonathan Bailey's like number 1 song and how you're first really introduced to him, um, I like it and I just find it catchy.
It's super catchy. It's so catchy. And it's just like charisma for your ears, like listening to it.
Yes.
Um, yeah, it does go on for a while, even on the soundtrack. I will give,
Mhm.
and I don't know if that's a plus or a minus. It depends on the mood that you're in that day, I guess. But yeah, it is. It's so fun, and I look forward to more from Fierro in part 2. Dancing Through Life might be a little further on my list, so we'll get there when we get there. My number 6, I had No One Mourns the Wicked. I wanted to bump this up, but this is like I should probably preface the 11 songs. This has there's a viral thing that I've seen on every social media where there's a viral sound of ranking all the songs. So I've been watching people rank them for weeks, and always dead last, almost always is Sentimental Man, which understandably.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so for me, there's like 8 of these songs that I love that I could have put a couple others as number 6, and then just No One Mourns the Wicked sort of edged it out just because of the stakes that it sets. We get, I think, one of Ariana Grande's best vocal and acting moments in the film during that whole sequence, and everything we're saying about how like the sort of political angle of the story, like the ironic part of it, like what we're bringing to it from knowing the Wizard of Oz and thinking we know that the story that we're being told, and how it's sort of setting us up to be upended. All of that is sort of baked into that. Um, and hearing her sing like, she died alone and all that. It's very like, oh, this is the first, I should also note, this is the first point in the movie where I did cry a little bit.
Oh, okay.
It was in this number. So that's it. I had to squeeze it into my top 6 because of that.
Okay.
What did you have at number 5?
I had One Short Day.
Nice. Why?
Um, it's also everything in this musical is an earworm. Like, you just can't help it. But I think I actually liked One Short Day better in the movie than I like the cast recording. And so that's kind of the only like not only reason, but I it's the 2 of them together. There's harmonies, but then there's like you get to see all of Oz. There's dancing. You bring in, Adina and Kristen and stuff to the whole thing. Um it's just like One Short Day. Like it's just really like catchy and everyone's just like ebullient and like effervescent and it's just like a song full of like hope, right? Their hopes haven't been dashed yet. I don't know. I liked the way it was presented on screen, actually. So that's why it's number 5.
I also love too the deceptive nature of it, where you're like, so this guy's really got these people out here singing a song about how happy the land of Oz is and
Yes.
how wonderful their wizard is, and here's the mythology of how the wizard came to us and all of this stuff, building up his own mythos. I think is really fascinating from that perspective. Obviously, of course, Adina and Kristen. I also think the added section that they added for the movie of, you know, the two the wise ones, having Adina do her Elphaba war cry in the song, one is a cool callback to
Yes.
the stage production,
Yes.
but then two, they present it as part of the prophecy that
Yes.
that makes me think. So is Elphaba who the prophecy is about at the end? You know what I mean? And then she just got kind of shunted aside and mismarketed as such, because she does that war cry. She does her own version of that war cry at the end, because I think the song says like, oh, you know, and Oz was down and blah. Once again we'll sing a joyous right.
Oh
And
yeah.
so Elphaba sings that at the end, so it's almost like she's the one who can read the Grimoire. She's the one who does that war cry. So it's like the prophecy was about her, but kind of got stolen away by the wizard. Basically,
Yeah.
is sort of my take, which I
Okay.
think is really interesting. Um, Number 5 for me, I ran into One Short Day so much because I don't have it on my 6. It would have been like 7 or 8. That's what I'm saying about like the 8 of them. I was like so
This is
close.
crazy. Like we don't match at all. Okay, yeah.
My number 5, I had What Is This Feeling? Which
Okay.
I could have put higher, and later I'll probably wish I had. Um, because, you know, if we're gonna have the story of these two enemies turned friends, two best friends, as One Short Day says, you gotta set the status quo. And so this was just a really well. Speaking of the choreography, that whole thing with the books that everyone's been doing on TikTok
Oh,
and
yes.
crazy. It's there's been time, because I've been really into this movie. Obviously, I've been watching a lot of the stuff that the press tour has come out with. So like the algorithm is so tailored to me that like so much of my stuff is
Yeah.
wicked. So I've gone through and I'd be like, look, I'll show my wife or my daughter, be like, look, there's people doing the dance constantly. Everyone, like almost every other one is like people doing the, oh dear Glinda, you are just
It's
too
too
good and
good.
all that.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh. So that choreography is just crazy and so much fun to watch. And just it is also, you know, like to your point, like some of the songs in this they have that lightness to them. They're catchy, but they're also fun. And this is sort of like we see the conflict brewing, but it's all in good fun thus far. So it's all like, you know, like moving the stuff in the room and then clearing it out to the side, and like, you know, trying to steal each other's seats and like all that. Like they're like passive aggressively fighting in that one class. All of that stuff is just so much fun. And Cynthia and Ariana really lean into it. And, you know, even the beginning, the letter, like, dearest, darlingest Momsy and
Mumsy and popsicle.
Popsicle, my dear father, and like the whole unusually and exceedingly peculiar and altogether quite impossible to describe, blonde.
Blonde.
So good. Love it.
So good.
Amazing. And we don't get very many in this movie, at least. We don't get a lot of true duets with the two of them. We get pieces of Defying Gravity. But then other than that, it's really like this song where we
Yeah.
get like pieces of One Short Day. This is the only like true duet where it's like in this film, at least, where it's Elphaba and Galinda. So I had to
Yes.
put it there. What did you have at number 4?
Number 4, I had popular. Popular. That was my number 4.
Why?
Um I have been obsessed with that song for such a long time because like I will do both parts, and I even like thought about doing I was into puppetry for like a hot minute, like I was in Avenue Q and stuff, and I
Oh, nice.
literally thought about like doing like a puppet audition and have like the puppet be Glinda and then I would be, you know, Elphaba, and it would be like a two like I've always had just like crazy I just love the song and the
Uh-huh.
absolute like lack of awareness, right? Like she's truly in like a figurative and literal bubble, right?
Uh-huh.
Glinda is. She's just in this own little world, and like I know what it being not popular in school, like I totally get like both sides, right? Like I totally knew those types of girls that would like, oh, we'll just do this and makeup and la la la,
We toss our
like
hair. Toss,
like
toss.
that whole thing exactly.
Yeah.
Like take your glasses off. Wow, like a she's all that moment or whatever. But like I I just it's so cute and it's really like Glinda's time to shine, right? Cuz I'm looking at my list and like Glinda doesn't have songs that are hers
Yeah.
in part 1 at least, you know? So, it's a chance to, like, really see how Glinda is and how well-meaning she is, even if she's, like, kind of a little, like, misguided.
And the way they stage it too, where everything like the boxes all
Oh,
open
the
up
choreography. Oh, yeah, so good.
and like
So
yeah.
cute. Like, she's just adorable in this. Like, Ariana is just so I just wanna put her in my pocket. Like, she's adorable.
Swinging from the chandelier, and then of course, obviously, the whole sequence at the end in the hallway with the high kick and all of that. So
Yes.
yeah, so good.
Oh,
It's just yeah, Ariana core. It's just like she just nails the entire sequence.
it's
No,
so good.
100%. I love that. Number 4, I had Dancing Through Life, which we kind of already talked about.
Okay.
That which is now the bit of choreography that I'm now seeing go viral, where now people are doing that sequence where Fiero's on top of the bench doing the dance and it's the wide shot of everyone. I'm
Oh,
seeing
see, I
now
don't
people
have, like,
start doing
TikTok
that.
or I don't t I my algorithms are not wicked skewed. So,
It's
they
probably
might
for
be
the best.
now because Big Brother's always listening.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, it's 100% like as per what we just said about popular. This is all Jonathan Bailey. Like that was
Yeah.
Ariana. This is Jonathan Bailey's Fiero. He gets such a fun introduction to the to not just to Elphaba because that's the scene in the forest, but like in the school where this sort of flirting moment with him and Galinda, where she's just like, are you looking for someone? Or somewhere or
Yes, the
somewhere
hair
something or
toss.
someone, and
Yes.
then he's like, "Oh, I promised to do a tour to any newly arrived students." Wait, are you a newly arrived student? That whole back and forth, it's like such chemistry coming off the screen. And yeah, like you said, everything with the tornado wheels and all and surfing on the books and all of that stuff. So good.
Yeah.
What did you have at number 3?
I have What Is This Feeling?
Anything to
I
add?
No, I just love, like, their duet and stuff, and just it's so cute, and again, like, it really gives you insight to both of their characters. No, I just love it, and I love singing both parts.
It's a fun song. It's definitely a fun song. Number 3, I had Popular, so we're not that far off.
Okay. Yeah.
We're kind of like you know, a spot off of each other.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, everything we already said. The moment with the glasses that you sort of alluded to, where she takes them off, she's like, "Maybe," and she's like, "Never mind." She
Yeah.
puts them back on. Gets such a huge laugh.
Because it's
That
such
whole
a
yeah,
trope in
it
all
is.
those movies, like, when you
And
make the ugly girl pretty, it's always taking off their glasses, and
yeah,
so this
exactly.
one was not that, and that was funny.
And Elphaba getting Galindified is basically putting a pink flower in her hair, and that's it.
That was the
Like,
end, yeah.
all of that, and she's like, "Maybe just this," and I was like, "That's it? Alright." I mean, sure. Whatever helps you sleep at night, Galinda. Um, what did you have at number 2?
I had The Wizard and I.
So did I!
I Did
Now we're
you?
lined up. Yes. There we
I
go.
love this song so much, and, like, again, it really connected with me as, you know, a lonely, you know, theater kid sometimes. Like, I really connected with this song. I think it's got, like, highs and lows, you know, like, it's fast, it's slow, like, it's got everything and just you really see, like, how innocent Elphaba still is in the beginning,
Mhm.
right? And, like, the hope she has for the future and, like, if I can just change who I am, everything's gonna be okay. My dad will love me, like, all these things, right? Because she was an abomination
Yeah.
to her family. So, like, I nothing that quite severe for me, but just I love the sentiment behind it and just like the bright-eyed, bushy-tailed kind of like innocence that really sets that really makes Elphaba's not fall obviously, but like being called wicked like that much more like affecting like to your heart, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm of the mindset that people like because I was born in '83, so people like of my generation, millennials. I'm on the older end of that, obviously, but millennials who grew up with the Disney Renaissance, which really sort of templatized itself after Broadway productions, after the stage, as far as the music is concerned, in a lot of ways. I think we're really sort of predisposed to accepting musicals into our heart because there's nothing I love more than an I Want song. And this is 100% an I Want song. This is a part of your world. This is Belle on the hillside being like, I want adventure in the way, great light somewhere.
Somewhere.
Like
Yeah.
that's 100% this. And like what you were saying with your mom was like the voices, that moment in this movie where she's like, we get Morable's little section in the beginning and she's like,
Right.
did that really just happen? Have I actually understood this weird quirk I've tried to suppress or hide? And then it's like, is a talent that could help me meet the wizard? And you're like, oh, there it is.
Yeah,
The
there it
first
is,
time she
girl. Sing
sings, you're like, oh my
it.
God. That by the end, when she's like, and I'll stand there with the wizard. And you're just like, hairs on the back of your neck.
So good.
Incredible. I'm going to listen to it as soon as we're done here.
Oh god. Okay.
So
I
good.
listened to it
Amazing.
earlier today.
Amazing. I love it. It's Cynthia Erivo at the height of her, arguably, we have one more song to get to, but arguably at the height of her powers, until the like I'm thinking now of something that came into my mind, totally not related to this genre of movie, but like in horror films, they always say you got to start, you got to start really strong. You don't have to hit them that hard again until the end. And vocally, Cynthia Erivo's first song is The Wizard and I, and she doesn't hit you that hard again until the end. And I think it carries this character the whole rest of the movie is this one song. And there's so much wrapped up in it of her, like her heart's desires.
Mhm.
And to the point that when she says in here, like, and one day he'll say to me, Elphaba, would it be all right by you if I would degreenify you? And then at the end, he's like, oh, is that something you'd want me to take care of? Like, she doesn't have to be green with the little toy that's in the palace. And she's like, no, she's accepted that part of herself
Yeah.
at that point. I think that song and the end of the movie, I think it comes full circle. It loops back around to the point that we get that moment that we'll get to probably in a second, where she sees young Elphaba and she grasps her hands and kind of like accepts where she's come from and who she is now and all of that. Yeah, it's so good. What is your number one? As if I couldn't already guess.
Yeah, my number 1 is obviously Defying Gravity.
Same.
It's also like legit a good song.
Can you
Like
imagine if neither of us had it in our top
I
six?
know,
We'd be like,
right?
what is
Like
up with this?
that'd be hilarious. You're like, I like Dr. Dillamon's song actually for number 1.
Something bad. Yeah.
No, I just you have like that song, you have to nail it, right? And like it also closes the first act, sorry, spoiler of the Broadway musical. It also like closes the first act as well. So you have to have the singing chops to carry it, not just the acting, right? And she nails it. Cynthia nails it, especially when you're comparing her to someone like Adina, right? Like
Mhm.
who's just got this amazing voice and hits these notes that like shouldn't even exist, right? So just she sells it. I've seen a couple reviews where people like don't think that Cynthia can like sing and act at the same time.
Oh, I disagree.
And I didn't see I read that review before I saw the movie and like I that never crossed
No.
my mind at all. So I was curious as to like what did they watch that I
Yeah,
didn't see.
seriously.
Um yeah, but no, it has to be Defying Gravity. It's just such a powerhouse of a song. It's the climax of like their character not arcs necessarily, but like there's no going back. Everything is changing, right? Like after like from this moment on nothing is going to be the same, right? Their friendship, Oz, Like no one is safe, no one is gonna, like, nothing is gonna be the same, and it's the song that, like, turns her into an antagonist even though she isn't,
Yeah.
you know? She makes a choice, she chooses a side essentially, and that is not the popular side, to not, no pun intended. I didn't mean it like that at all, but, like, it's true. But yeah, I just, Defying Gravity is just up there for, like, show-stopping moments, in my opinion.
And you leave the theater on such a high.
Yes.
Uh, in this case, the movie theater, but in the other case, the this, Broadway theater or stage theater. But yes, and the movie elongates it out a bit. There's, the whole thing with the hot air balloon, and they're trying to they're trying to escape the monkeys and
Yeah,
all
the
of that
song
stuff.
is longer, yeah.
So it's chopped up a bit more,
Yeah,
but I feel like I don't feel like that weakens it. I feel like if anything, it intensifies so that when you get to that point, you're like, okay, well there really are no options. They've tried the other things. They tried to get away together, and there are no options except the broomstick, basically.
and
And
they
you
didn't chop up the important parts of the song either.
exactly.
Like, they
Yeah.
didn't take the big crescendo and pause and do dialogue and then continue the song, you know what I mean? They did
Right,
that in the
right.
beginning part of the song as opposed to, like, the really big, they let Cynthia shine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also like it's heartbreaking because it is a real line in the sand moment where Glinda, I'm trying to use her right name for where we are in the story.
I
At
know,
this
I've
point,
been
we're
saying
Glinda.
Glinda, sorry, theater
It's
people.
the same difference. Glinda, you could tell she wants to be strong enough to follow Elphaba, but
Yeah,
she can't. Like, she's not hardwired that way. She is, well, I have to do what I have to do to stay popular. Like,
right, yeah.
as frustrating as it is in that moment, where during that whole song, she's kind of right. Like, how you're perceived is very powerful. So that's basically her whole message to Elphaba in popular is like, it's important how other people see you, and that you can use that as kind of currency as you go along in life. And that's what she values. And so here, even though she knows that the wizard and Morrible are not in the right, she chooses the what she sees as the easier path. And so it's the two the people who, like, 10 minutes ago were saying that their best friends are now, their paths are diverging.
Mhm.
And it's heartbreaking to watch. And the little touches, like the getting the cape and tying it around her, and Ariana's weeping during that scene, and then Cynthia improved that wink that she gives her in that moment.
Oh, I didn't
All of
know
that.
that.
I have so much useless
That's
well,
amazing, I didn't know
wicked
that,
trivia
okay.
now. So much, so many little touches I think that wove into that. I mentioned the young Elphaba that she sees as she's falling and trying to figure out how to fly. Obviously, the big kind of climactic moment is framed as it is when she's on stage. It's framed exactly with the long cape and her kind of in the middle of the frame. All
Mhm.
of that, I think, is just so well done and such a tribute to the stage production. And yeah, it's all those viral rankings of the Wicked songs that I mentioned earlier. I sometimes it's Sentimental Man last, or sometimes it's Dear Old Shiz or Something Bad or whatever. Those are like kind of the consensus bottom three, but I have yet to see one that doesn't have Defying Gravity at number one. And I think it's a boring answer, but it's undeniably, like, it is the best song. There's a reason it is as iconic as it is.
Yeah.
And just from a musical standpoint, Stephen Schwartz I think this is obviously one of his most beloved songs that he's ever written. And just from a lyrical standpoint too, just something has changed within me. I'm through with playing by the rules of someone else's game. It's so empowering. You could take that message and that energy, that mood into anything. If you're like, all right, I have a really big meeting today, something has changed within me, and you're like, whatever it is, whatever challenge you have, like, it builds you up in that way. And I think Cynthia brings so much to it, where it's not even, I don't even want to say better or worse than Adina. It's just, it's different. She does her own version of it, which is, I think, as it should be.
And I agree, and I think that that's what both of them do. Both, her and Ariana, like, they're not they're not trying to sound like or emulate the mannerisms of, Adina and Kristen. Like, they really do bring their own to it while still keeping with the, like, basic sounds, the trills, the runs, like, all of that, like, Cynthia has her own war cry, but it's still, like, within the Wicked universe, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it still fits with the cast recording, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree.
Is there anything about Wicked Part 1 that we haven't talked about that you wanted to make sure we mentioned before we start wrapping up?
I wanna pose a question to you.
Okay.
So, there has been some criticism regarding, like, the coloring of the film,
Mhm.
and I think the only thing that I would have done differently is maybe make Oz a little brighter.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think the color palette was muted. I disagree when people say that. But, like, I think it would have been an homage also to, like, Wizard of Oz, how you go from the black and white to the Technicolor.
Right.
And, like,
Right,
I
right.
don't think this movie should have been in black and white until they went to Oz, like, not at all. But I think, like, Oz should have looked a little bit different
Yeah.
compared to, like, Shiz. So I'm curious if you feel the same way or not.
That's interesting. I have seen, like, criticisms of the color grading as well.
Yeah.
I don't I guess I'm not the kind of person that's really bothered by that a whole lot. I think they could have made it a little brighter too. I'm never gonna argue against color, especially when you're like I said, riffing on a property that's so known for Technicolor, kind of like
Right.
popularize that term.
Yeah.
So I wonder if part two will maybe lean into that a little bit more now that we're getting closer to the Wizard of Oz timeline that we
Yeah.
know.
Interesting.
I
Okay.
think that would be a good stylistic choice, and that also is a kind of a good transition into, since we talked about Wicked Part 1, what are you hoping to see with Wicked for Good? How do you feel about that title, and what do you wanna see them do in the second film?
Don't love the title,
Yeah.
especially
I
since the first like, they went Wicked. It was either Wicked or Wicked Part 1. There was nothing, so the fact that you're taking the second movie and you're deciding to, like,
subtitle it?
yeah,
Oh,
I
I
don't
have
love it. I think you just could have done Wicked Part 2 and been fine.
Right.
Because it even has the title card, doesn't it even say, like, Part 1 at some point, or
Yeah,
maybe it just says Wicked?
Wicked, it says Wicked, and then it says Part 1, like,
That's
in
what
the
I thought,
bottom right
okay.
corner, yeah.
So, like, don't love the title, don't even know why it's called that, like,
I feel like say your piece, and then I have a follow-up.
Oh, no, it's okay. I honestly am just looking forward to a wrap up of the story and what seeing how far they decide to go with it.
Mhm.
Because, like, the stuff with the animals is, like, as an animal person and, like, a, dog owner and stuff, like, the animal stuff is heartbreaking to me because you're also viewing it through we'll say a modern day lens, right?
Mhm.
Of just where we are right now, like, in the world. So, it's, like, especially, like, heartbreaking. So, I'm curious to see, like, how far they kind of go with that.
Yeah.
But honestly, like, I'm trying to go in with no expectations this time. Like, because I'm trying not to prejudge it. Like, I was already starting to kind of prejudge this one, right? With
Yeah.
being skeptical. And I wasn't even sure I was gonna see it in theaters because I was like, I don't know. Like, that's a long time to watch a movie that isn't good or whatever, but,
Right.
um, no, I'm legit excited for it, just not that name.
They've earned your goodwill,
They
basically, is
have
what you're
earned my
saying.
goodwill. Yes, they absolutely have, so hopefully they don't squander it, but I don't think they filmed them both at the same time, so, like,
Yeah.
it's not like it's gonna be a different director or anything
Right.
like that,
Right, right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Anything that people didn't like about this one, they couldn't go back and change things. It's like the vision is what the vision is
right.
at this point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, just a quick question about the animal thing. So obviously in the stage production, it's a Dr. Dilliman is a man in goat prosthetics and all of that. And here they're more photorealistic animals. Did that change at all how you emotionally reacted to the animal subplot? Now that it looks like a goat and not just a man with
I was
goat
gonna
face.
say the effects were really good because it also could have just looked like a really crappy CGI goat,
Right.
like it because there's so many literal moving parts to that goat, including moving the mouth. Right, you have to move the mouth like a goat, but then also kind of like a human, form the vowels, but then make it goat like. Like I was super impressed um, with Dr. Dillamond. I think they spent a lot of time creating him. So I think that maybe did affect me more. But I remember this. I remember Dr. Dillamond on stage being affecting too, though.
Yeah.
It's been a long time for me, but like I don't remember like laughing at how ridiculous he looked. Like
Right.
I was sold on this whole thing, you know.
Well, to your point with Wizard of Oz is just a guy in a lion costume. So I mean, we're used to that with this world too.
And I honestly, when like now that I'm thinking about it, and you did ask me about like part two, I don't know how I feel if they're gonna bring in Dorothy.
Character.
Like, there's
Yeah.
there's rumors that like they might like tie it in the
Yeah.
Wizard of, and I don't know. I'm on the fence about it, so I guess we'll have to see.
Yeah, I think I'm fine with Dorothy not really being a
Yeah,
major factor in it. I also don't like when film franchises start like number and then also subtitle and then switch halfway through. Like that drives me insane.
yeah.
So the example I always go to is like the Jurassic Park franchise, where it's like Jurassic Park, then it's the Lost World, but the subtitle is Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park, yes.
Then it's Jurassic Park 3, and I'm like, but you never gave us Jurassic Park 2, technically. Uh, uh, so I also would have preferred they had kept it to just Wicked Part 2 if they were going to do that.
Yeah,
I almost feel like in the theater it's going to be a title called Wicked Part 2 and that the For Good is more for marketing purposes than anything, because I wouldn't be surprised if they turn this into an ongoing franchise. There are 4 books. There's like 20 L. Frank Baum books in that world, which
yeah,
are from what I understand public domain, so like have free reign to split the difference between the Gregory Maguire books and the Baum books. So I can probably see if these continue making money. If 2 makes money like 1 did, expect Wicked Son of a Witch, or which is what the
yeah. Oh,
second book
yeah,
is
Son of
called.
Which is what the second book is called.
Expect that to be announced for 2028 or something. Um,
Yeah,
so
but
I feel
like,
like they might be doing
yeah.
that some.
Though you're probably right. I just think it's silly that they started with Wicked Part 1 and then now they're kind of changing the name, but then the title card, like you said, might still say Part 2. Like, if anything, I maybe would have done Wicked Act 1, Wicked
Yeah,
Act 2, but that's probably like a turnoff to some people,
right.
maybe. But like, I don't know. I think Wicked for Good is, I don't know, not
Yeah.
not a favorite.
Yeah, I agree. I could see that. Um, last thing before we start wrapping up is that obviously a lot of times on these episodes I have our guests like kind of try and sell people on the movie that they're talking about. Obviously this movie doesn't need to be sold. Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo have done a really good job of doing that for us. Uh, if people have seen Wicked and are looking for other things to sort of tide them over until Wicked Shutter for good, uh, what would you recommend they check out?
Oh my gosh. So I have been thinking about this in the back of my brain for like the past hour, when you kind of hinted that I would need an answer. Um, I really enjoyed In the Heights,
I'm
which
glad you brought
is
it up.
a little bit more modern, right? Like the music is not as like classically Broadway,
Yeah,
right? Because it's like Lin-Manuel Miranda, so it's that vibe. But like I think that's also John Chu, right?
sure is.
He also directed it. So I would recommend In the Heights. Um Man, a movie that is not for everyone, but I saw for the first time last year is One from the Heart by Francis Ford Coppola, and it's
Huh.
his version of a musical, and it's really I really liked it. Like, when I say that it's interesting, it isn't for everybody, but I wanted to take this opportunity to, like, promote something that maybe people have
Yeah.
missed. And it was on the Criterion channel for a while, and it still may be on there. That's how I watched it. And there's 2 different cuts because Coppola always has more than one cut of his movies. um, so yeah, I would say In the Heights. I would say One from the Heart has like an oddly classic yet 70s vibe. Like it's
Mhm.
hard to explain. Um, yeah. What about you?
I was definitely gonna say In the Heights because of the
Oh,
John Chu
awesome.
connection.
Yeah, because of the
I'm
John Chu
glad you're
connection.
we've covered that on this podcast. That's a movie I love, and I think that was one of the ones where I was like, once I heard he was announced for Wicked, I was like, "Oh, man, I live in the Heights. I guess I need to see that now."
Yeah.
And so I did, and here we are. I keep trying to think of other. I'm planning later on our sister podcast, Franchise Detours, like towards the end of the year, to do a curated Oz mega series which would deal with the Wizard of Oz, Wicked for good, and also a couple other ones. I would recommend people. I haven't seen The Wiz in forever, so I can't recommend that because I don't remember it that well. I saw it when I was a kid. I would recommend people to check out Return to Oz because that's a childhood favorite.
Oh my gosh.
It's not
Yes.
musical, but it's very very different take on this material. It's like What If Oz, but a horror film for kids.
I love like that's the thing. I don't like Wizard of Oz. I love Return to Oz.
Interesting. We might have to have you back for this mega series because I definitely plan on covering Return to Oz as well.
Oh, awesome.
So we might have to circle back on that. Yeah. So this has been so much fun, Lauren. Thank you for coming on to discuss 2024 is Wicked. Tell the people where they can find you on social media.
You can find me on X still and Instagram and Letterboxd at That Movie Is Fine. And then you can also find my podcast on Instagram, That Movie Is Fine Podcast, or TMIF Pod on X as well.
Awesome. Meanwhile, find more episodes like this wherever you get your podcasts and on crookedtable.com. Show your support on Patreon at patreon.com/crookedtable. Or if you want to keep up with us on social media, that'll be at Crooked Table on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads. We'll be back next episode with another movie musical. But for now, that's a wrap on another Crooked Table production. Keep watching, everybody.